Hola.
Hi.
We are here. We are CCSK Law. It's time for tips from the bar. We are not intimidated by the snow.
No.
In fact, I just went around and walked in it.
Yep.
That's how awesome it is out there, and
That's right.
unflinching I am about it. It's awful though.
We don't care.
It is horrible.
It's terrible.
And the sidewalks are like hit and miss, mostly miss.
A little bit of slip, a little bit
a lot
of fall.
that slush is super slick.
The roads
Careful.
are hit and miss.
The roads
They
are
got the
not-
north-south ones up on the north side of town, but they didn't get the east-west ones. So
Yeah.
it's getting in and out is kind of a little bit complicated.
So we got our first blast of lake effect snow. Now it's nowhere near what LaPorte took on a couple weeks back.
Yeah,
where it was
but we
just-
got a
just
solid
LaPorte.
6 inches through the afternoon. I mean, I think.
Oh, it was heavy. Yeah.
From when I parked at the office about 11 or so till I don't know. I just walked out. It's kind of let up now. It's not coming down. It's a mess out there. A lot of parking lots are getting plowed. Not ours, but
No, not ours.
a lot of parking lots are getting plowed. And
I have to say it was fun, picking up the kids 15 minutes early.
yeah, about that. That
Because
was a
we
real
got a
lifesaver.
But it
Right
was,
in the
it was
heart of the
interesting.
horribleness.
Right
I
in the
mean,
heart of the
it was
horribleness. And it's funny because you see
worst
all these
part of
kids standing outside and they all are covered in
just
snow.
covered in snow.
Because they're standing out there waiting for the car line to come through. So all the
Yeah.
car riders were just covered, and it was hilarious. My son gets in the car, and I think I just looking at him, I was like, "Really? Couldn't shake some off, man?"
Yeah, nice. Can you step back outside,
Right.
shake off a
Let's
little
let
bit?
off a little bit.
So do like a
Yeah.
dog and just like shake off before you come in. So yeah, we had our first real blast of snow. I think we got in this little instance probably more than we've had collectively through the year. We've had like a few dusting spots.
We've had some.
Darn
Probably,
close.
yeah,
This
pretty
is
close.
this is something else.
So,
We had some. It was around New Year somewhere.
Yeah.
around that. There was some
but
there
we
that
never
was pretty
like we were supposed to have always gotten more.
Right, but never.
This is the first time we actually got what they. said
Somebody
we
was
were
saying a
gonna
couple
get.
weeks ago, I saw somebody post something where they're like, "Oh, look, it's gonna be like 15 inches of snow this weekend," and that just kind of disappeared, and nothing ever happened to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad because I don't want that.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of it. But
Yeah.
I get less and less enamored with it.
The more I see
the
it,
older I get.
the more I see it, the more I want to live in Florida.
I don't know that I've gotten to the point where I want to live in Florida, but I just don't want to have cold and snow.
I've been there for a while. My wife's
Like,
not
ready
there.
to go.
So
Yeah.
so I mean I'm here,
Yeah.
but
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I love the snow. I know I'm weird with that. I love the snow. I'm ready to go sled.
it'll change
I'm gonna.
as you get older.
I like.
I will throw a snowball at you. All right. Don't you put that on
And I'll
me.
holler. I'll stop my car and I'll come. like, I was thinking about that the other day when we were kids, like throwing snowballs at cars.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why we felt the need to do that, but we did.
Oh.
School buses and things like that.
We got into it. Oh, God, we were stupid. So we were hiding behind trees and we were tossing out those little acorns
Oh, sure.
at cars
Oh, nice.
as they drive down the road.
Nope.
And I popped one on this guy's real nice truck,
Oh.
yellow truck, and he just slams on his brakes and skidded for about 20 seconds and pulled into my buddy's driveway. He come flying after me. I mean, I took off. It was
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah. We don't think those all the way through when we're kids.
No, we didn't really think. Oh well, hey, they could just stop.
Yeah, what could be the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
No. Well, we are here for our weekly foray into legal banter without the legalese. And
Except for this week, because the topic is going to get kind of inherently.
we're gonna
We
set.
try.
Yeah, I
try
think
We're gonna try to explain it.
we're gonna
It's
talk a little
ago.
tax code. We're not gonna spend the whole time talking about it because that would be just awful.
Just talking numbers.
But you gotta get your dull voice on, and this is what.
Oh,
we're
no,
doing.
gosh.
28 IRC.
Get super monotone and go.
Section 1328.
Well, I was telling Isaac that I
Your-
was actually sitting on a webinar today, and it's a group that I'm a member of, and they were doing a tax. There's a series of these tax reform webinars that are out there now, which I'm actually glad they're doing them now. I was really irritated when people were doing them in November and December before the tax code had actually been written.
Before
rewritten.
committee was
Right.
there. Before anybody had made
all
any
on
decisions.
rumor. Yeah,
all on
it's,
rumor.
It's amazing, and people would spend time and money.
But nowadays,
watching those
rumors
things.
facts. So
Yeah, it might
it
as
doesn't
well
really
be.
matter.
Rumor is
It was
is
tweeted,
subjective,
so-
right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was tweeted, or somebody
say
said
rumor.
that somebody
Truth
said
is
that somebody
subjective.
said
Fact is
it
subjective.
It's just-
So I was listening to this thing, and it was supposed to be on a topic, and there's a next week topic that'll be more along the lines of what Isaac's going to talk about in terms of choice of entity and how the new tax code affects that, or the new tax laws affect that when it comes to business structure
Business.
and tax decision making and things.
Yep.
Well, the first half of the one that I'm sitting in today went way in depth. And I kept thinking, this is for an accountant, not for an attorney. There's a point where you need to understand that as an attorney.
Yeah.
So you could point somebody to an accountant and or be a business guy that really has to know these things. But from an estate planning standpoint, it got way in the weeds quickly.
Well, to be fair, we just need to know enough to understand how to work with accountants,
right?
Or the tax attorneys,
which is my feedback to this webinar. Yeah.
Like we don't need. So I go to the point where I understand how like an S corp works in terms of the taxation,
right?
But I'm not the one filing the form.
No,
right? And so I'm not the one who's
we're doing the calculation as to why the split this way. So
exactly,
I will say that was one of the things I was sharing with Isaac briefly, and we'll go more into it next week. Is now the decision making of how you're going to determine what income you want to pay on, or what the income is that you're going to calculate. There's 3 or 4 different paths that you have to go down with qualified business income, and whether you're an owner, whether you're a certain type of business.
As if it wasn't complicated
right.
enough.
So I guess the one bright spot was that, as simplified as the tax code is supposed to be becoming, it's not in some things. So accountants do not have to worry about losing jobs. It's still going to be tough. But
it takes a special person to want to be that deep.
The thing I kept thinking was, I don't know how different it is, or if this is just I'm learning something or seeing something. Maybe this is happening now. And they're just sort of moving the numbers a little bit.
Right.
But it seemed to me the way he was presenting it, it was like, here's how it's going to be done now. You're looking at W-2 wages and dividend. Oh, is a headache already. And look, and there I go. I didn't want to go that way.
But your focus.
My focus, I'm going to touch briefly on the tax brackets, and we'll probably spend another show talking more in depth about what this means. But, I think one of the things that, and what we're trying to we're going to try to stay above the political board, but I think regardless of what we say, people are going to probably take it the way they want to, right?
Sure.
So there's been a lot of talk about how this was a tax cut for the rich, and there was corporations that were going to benefit. And while that may be true, as I'm looking at some of these things, there are situations where the very wealthy and even super wealthy are going to get left out on some things, and I'll touch on some of those. But the brackets, more often than not, we don't really know what bracket we're in. We just, if you're doing TurboTax or H&R Block's tax program or whoever else's tax program, or you're going to an accountant or tax preparer, you may not know what your tax rate is. It's a weird calculation anyway. It's not all my money is at 30% or 25%. If you pay so much on this rate, so much up to this point, so much up to this point.
Graded tiered system.
Right, exactly. So if you made $80,000, all of your $80,000 isn't taxed at 33%. It's going to be the first part taxed at one rate, and then it goes up as you go into the next block. There's a nice bracket out there that puts your ranges in there, so it's like this much on this much, and you figure that out.
Yep.
The thing that's going to be different though is different income is going to look differently as we talk about, especially small business owners. If you don't have a good relationship with your accountant, find one, because you're going to need someone to break this down and make sure you understand. Hey, should I take wages or should I take a dividend or a distribution from my entity? What's the benefit of a partnership? This stuff will go into next week versus the others. But for people who are just individuals, not businesses, and you get a salary and you get a W-2 at the end of the year, about this time. Hopefully you're getting them. What the brackets are doing in this new structure is expanding the amount that's taxed at a lower rate. So there's still a lot of the ranges are about the same initially. So there's a 10% rate that is pretty close to what it would have been without a change. And then there's now a 12% rate where it used to be a 15% rate. And that number goes way up. For a married couple, it goes up nearly $80,000. Whereas previously you would have been at 25% in that adjusted gross income level.
That's great.
there's a 25% tax rate that kicks in. Now it goes up to about 165 for a married couple and 82 for the others. And then it goes up from there. So there's the 10, 12, 22, 24, I said 25, 32%, 35%, and 37%. It's like, well, we still got to have seven levels. So we're just going to pack them all really tight together. So they're there. The top end before you get to 37, before you had to be about $450,000. Now you have to be over 600. So it's coming down from 39 plus the 3.8 still in there, by the way, which I thought went away. The Medicare tax on the super rich, that's still there. It did not go away. So you may still bump into that if you're in the wealthiest tax brackets. Where it really applies is on where it's narrowed is on investment income,
right?
Only if you're over 200,000. So it's not really super rich; it's $200,000 of total income, but it's applied to your investment income. It's not legalese, but it's just confusing. Anyway, so the other thing, and as it pertains to a lot of things that I deal with, trusts that produce income and people who have probate accounts that are producing income. Those are called fiduciary accounts. Same tax brackets apply. Actually, there's a fewer number of them, but you hit the top bracket at $12,500 in taxable income. So 37 is the top bracket, but you get to it very, very quickly. So that's a lot of times when we're talking with people who want to hold assets in an account for their kids. Maybe you've got a situation where you don't want income distributed. You've got to really think hard about that because it's 37% at $12,500, but you hit the 24% at $2,500. So there's a quarter of your dollars going out pretty quickly. So fiduciary accounts, if you're in probate, I'm dealing with some folks right now who when you get into these big estates and you have to start dealing with, the IRS is going to audit you if you file a 706 for having to pay taxes. Now you've got money sitting in fiduciary accounts. Well, do you want to put it in a no growth account to prevent the income tax, or are you going to take the hit on the income tax? Because if you've got $500,000 in a fiduciary owned investment account, you're going to make money in your sleep. And now if you make 12.5, you're going to be paying out a pretty substantial amount of money on that. So that's something that's been kicked around a lot. What they termed SALT limitation, which is the state and local tax deduction.
Right.
But one thing that people need to understand is that, a lot of people in Indiana, that's not really going to touch. There are people in Indiana that it will touch. And certainly if you go west, young man, it's going to hit you because the property taxes and the income taxes are much higher. The thing I didn't know until I was preparing for this is that's both. So it's a $10,000 cap on both income tax and property tax. So people can get to that pretty quickly. There's a lot of people in our neck of the woods. There's areas you could draw a line not far from here where they're paying $10,000 in property tax. And then certainly income tax. They're going to have an income tax on top of that too. So again, if you're sitting on a $100,000 home and you're making $50,000 a year, this isn't probably going to be an issue for you. But if you're sitting on $1 million home and you've got $10,000 in property tax plus your income tax, both state and local, you're gonna get capped on what you can deduct. So you're not paying more. You're just not able to deduct what you may have been able to deduct in the past. There's some games you can play with that,
and that's an interesting concept to me because, so I get in arguments with my mother-in-law a lot.
What?
I know, but it's just about when it comes to, they're fun. Well, not really, but they are. But it's about. So we got an argument one time in regards to she was saying that you should always have a large mortgage on your home because she wanted to be able to deduct it.
Right.
And I'm saying, no, if you have the ability to pay off your home, just pay it off because then you're paying the government to be able to deduct it. Well, this actually caps that even more because now, I mean, you're capped at $10,000. I mean, there's really, really no point now to go beyond that. I mean, if you can pay things down, pay them down.
Yeah. And again,
That's
you're
interesting.
going your margin on that's much narrower if you're paying any income tax, both
Absolutely.
state and
Absolutely.
local. Not that we have huge income taxes in our state,
Mhm.
but it adds up.
Sure.
So you've just got to be aware that those are going to be capped.
Now, if you're in California, you're going to get hit with that because their state tax is crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
I mean, you're right. As you go west, people are going to get hit.
Well, and
harder.
Illinois is one of the target states. When I say target states, it's not like this was written to target them, but it is a state that's going to fall into that because of the issues. And it's not like they can lower their taxes.
Right.
Right.
They're struggling with
dependent on
money
that.
as it is.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what happens because their property tax. When I talk to people, I meet a lot of people that have moved to Indiana. I think the building was empty.
Some sort of that must be one of the must be on the front on the Michigan out there. Must be a snowplow going.
Or
by
do we go
and
that far by?
scraping.
I don't know how far we go into the building. I never really thought about that.
It's really
We're
because
pretty
think
close.
about those stairs.
Yeah,
How
we're
far it is to
pretty
that
deep.
window? We only got
Yeah, you're right.
10 feet on the other side of this on the road.
I will say when I was walking to grab dinner before this over at Blackbird, somebody had almost hit Jimmy's. Like,
Whoa!
They were up over the curb and just
Really?
like a couple of feet of the front of Jimmy's. I don't know what they were doing to be going that fast.
They really wanted some Jimmy's.
Spot, yeah. They're closed.
And Jimmy's are closed.
They're
so-
closed. You can't
There's
get
no
in there.
drive-through at Jimmy's, and
Nope.
they're not open after 3.
And so don't try to drive through.
Don't drive through,
Right.
and don't try to drive through the alley either because it's not there. But so the thing that I talk to people when they move across the border, they're shocked by the drop in cost of housing just on a purchase basis
From Illinois to
Illinois to
From
Indiana.
Illinois,
sure.
And then the cost of living is so much different with property taxes down, insurance down, income tax down. Maybe our cigarettes are more, I don't know, but gas, I don't know. There's things that people do go back. Maybe it's cheaper to register your vehicle.
Well, I wouldn't say the Sunday alcohol, but
hey, that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on too.
So I would imagine that means that probably property values when they put in that they're going to be extending the train down to Lowell.
Right.
Is what they're So as soon as that goes in, especially with all this new tax stuff that's going to be over there, that area is going to just
it's going to probably
up.
be that last sort of straw to really to cut things loose because we haven't seen a mass exodus into Indiana.
But guess what? The number one state that lost the most amount of residents last year was.
I don't know.
Yeah, who could guess?
I'm going to
Illinois.
say Illinois.
Illinois, you win.
But you know what's surprising, and I saw some stories about this. Indiana thought that they would see the influx.
No,
It's
but
not.
actually, we were one of the we weren't too much farther down on that list. We made the top 10 for the most people leaving still,
Really?
and it's from Indiana. And yeah, we did not get the entire
I
influx.
blame the
Yeah, we're not
alcohol on
seeing-
Sunday thing.
What's that? So we'll see what happens with some of those states where it's an issue.
Mhm.
And again, I think what this does is now people are going to have when you have these like referendums to bump up your taxes for school purposes. There's not as much. It's going to touch people in a different way. It's not just paying out, but I can't deduct it down the road. So we'll see what the long-term effect is. It will touch a lot of people, probably more so than what it was originally thought to be. But here's one that probably won't touch a lot of people.
Right.
Though got a lot of play, which is the home mortgage limitation. Right now, if you take out a mortgage for acquisition, I'm not even going to get into what that means from a legal standpoint, but in a nutshell, it's if you're buying a house and you mortgage it, you could deduct the interest on that mortgage up to $1 million value. The first $1 million of your mortgage, you could deduct the interest.
Right.
This is super simplified, not actual advice. But just for explanatory purposes, if you had a $2 million mortgage, you can't deduct that second $1 million worth of mortgage interest. That number's dropping down to $750.
Oh no.
So now if you have $1 million mortgage and you had it before December 15th, you're grandfathered in.
Okay.
And if you're in the process of closing, there is some sort of soft window that you have to be closed very soon. But you had to have started the process before the 15th, and it has to close. I can't remember if it was 45 days or 60 days after. But that was so. One of the other things about this whole tax code is it's 2018. There's some weird caveat in our rules that say changes to the tax code for individual purposes cannot be permanent unless they had like a supermajority. the 60 votes or whatever it was. In order to get this passed, they waived some rules, but they couldn't get around that. So a lot of these, all the individual rules, the term is sunset. I don't understand why it's what it means, but the sun goes down on these rules on January 1, 2026. How can you think? I mean, I can't even think of 2026, right? That's not uncommon. There was,
What year is it?
there's a couple of laws there are a couple of tax things that were going on for a number of years, namely the estate tax, that kept having to be renewed every other year. And for years it was. One year it went away altogether because it's just like they let it go and it went back to nothing. But then they realized if it wasn't re-upped, it was dropping back to $1 million. So they never let it fall back.
Somebody that was just super rich died that year too.
Oh, there's all these stories of that.
It was like it was something. I mean, to the tune of like close to $1 billion.
Yeah. Well, the same thing happened in Indiana. About the same time they codified the federal, Indiana waived its inheritance tax, and if you died 2 days, before the end of the year with a substantial amount of money, it is going to be expensive. So anyway, the home mortgage, if you're in that, I'm getting a multi-million-dollar mortgage, you're only going to be able to deduct the interest on the first $750,000. Now, that's only for individuals. The business side of the world, business and commercial, didn't really have that mortgage interest credit, but you had a business expense. So that doesn't change. There's no cap on that for business expense purposes. One of the other things that's making people nervous is they're limiting, well, they're not limiting, but the charitable deduction benefit may go away.
Right.
Because people aren't going to give to get a tax deduction.
Right.
I have it's my premise that most people don't, most normal people, middle class people who are just given to their church or they're given to Goodwill or United Way or something like that, they just give and they're not really doing it for the deduction. They'll just continue to give. But now you won't have to file for those little deductions because your standard deduction's going up.
Standard deduction's going up anyway.
Which
Right.
is great because that's going up.
So that means I don't have to itemize, right? So now again, go back to
itemize, then it doesn't matter what the charitable deduction is. So it's not going to affect a lot of people.
Right.
Though there are some people that it may still affect.
And there was talk about they were going to get rid of the medical write-offs. That didn't happen. They were going to get rid of some other things, and those things didn't happen. So there's still more deductions than what they thought December 2nd. But the standard deduction didn't quite double, but for individuals it's $12,000. For a married couple it's $24,000. Plus there's a child deduction that's in there too, which I think is $2,000. Which
it goes up from $1,000 to $2,000.
Yeah.
That did double.
There's still standard deductions for elderly and the blind. And the thing that I think frustrated me about people making grand statements about this when it first came out was you have to do the math to see how this is going to affect you. Because not only maybe I don't have the deductions that I was going to claim, but now I have a standard deduction. But I also may be in a bracket where my tax rate's much lower. If I was making $55,000 a year, I was in a 25% tax bracket.
Right.
Now I'm not. Now I'm in the 15%. Maybe I've got that wrong, but yeah, I'm in the 12% tax bracket.
Yeah.
Whereas before I may have been 22 or something like that, 15%, whatever it might have been. So my AGI is going to be in a different spot. Right. My deductions, which pull the AGI down. So there's lots of things. It's a matrix, if you will, to figure this out. So that just to instantly say, oh, this is going to hurt some, it's going to help others. You don't know because the type of income you have, the type of deductions you may have had or may have claimed, may not have claimed. I mean, there's just all these things that go into it. There's just no like super standard way to say all of you are going to be taxed more and all of you are not, because it's very
only when you
broken
don't
up.
want to get people riled up.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that did roll back was exemptions, personal exemptions. But again, by doing the deduction, you don't have to claim as many of those personal exemptions. One thing that I didn't even think about that didn't change was cap gains.
Okay.
So the cap gains rates are the same. And, again, it's going to be on your, sale of an appreciated asset. whether it's a stock or property or something like that. That's going to.
So if you invested in something, you're taxed differently than ordinary income.
Right.
So
If
they're
you
called
hold it for
capital gains, and
a certain
that's
amount of time.
Yeah.
if you as long as you hold it for like
Long-term,
stock over a year and all that, you
Right.
get long-term capital gains. So there's just a different rate that you have to mess with, and so they most certainly could have messed with it, but it sounds like they did not.
No, they didn't. They didn't go that way. And then the other thing that they thought was going away was the HSA deduction, and I think that was more affected by the healthcare reform stuff because you can't get that many.
Yeah.
Because those high deductibility plans weren't meeting the threshold of what met
Right.
was necessary to be insured to not have a penalty. But one of the other things that went away was the penalty.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now there's not a penalty if you don't have an appropriately defined insurance policy or insurance plan. They're not going to penalize you.
Right.
So
See, when I was younger and healthier, I remember that was one of the things that there was time when I didn't have insurance and
by
I
design,
worried about it.
you just chose not to have
because I
insurance.
chose not to have it. I didn't need it. And I had I remember this was probably back around the early 2000s. No, even late 90s. And I had a kind of like a major issue coverage. So, if I got in a car wreck and, my car insurance didn't cover the medical and I had like an arm that had to be reattached or something,
Right.
then I had coverage for that.
Right.
But it
High
was like,
deductibility are like these, right.
but it was like $50 a month.
Right.
Because it was like strict. I mean, it was just going to be
Well,
major catastrophic policy. But I could do that.
Yeah.
When you had this mandate where you have to have insurance, otherwise you're going to pay this penalty.
And you had to have
You
a
can't do
specific kind of insurance. You had to cover things that
then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you have to come out of pocket for all this. So I think it's going to be a good thing for a lot of people to get freed up with that.
Well, and I kind of in that
they
same
want.
time frame you're talking about, when we went to the doctor, we expected to pay to go to the doctor,
Mhm.
but it was $30 or $40 to go to the doctor because everybody just sort of paid cash
Right.
over the barrel. And then you got in the PPO mentality and the HMO mentality, and that just changed everybody's sort of the thought process about insurance.
Which there are doctors now who basically just get you on payment plans.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where
yeah.
you literally they just take cash or
Yeah.
charge for everybody, and you just are on a payment plan, and it's a monthly thing. And so instead of getting insurance, you're just literally always paying this doctor or something like that. And then that's better, and it's skipping the middleman on that one, because the insurance is all over the place and it is very unpredictable. And the changes with this and the changes in the market are just so hard to determine.
So here's a question, just because I don't know. So part of the reason that they originally had this mandate in was because they needed to pay for the coverage for not allowing a kind of a elimination period for pre-existing conditions. Are they still leaving that elimination period? I mean, are they going to allow people to still have? I mean, if you get insurance, they have to cover you from day one. Or are they going to go back to allowing the time where you could have you couldn't do anything for 6 months or a year?
Well, the marketplace plans are day one coverage.
I understand that. I'm just
So,
saying for
But I don't think
wonder how
it
that's
takes so
gonna
much.
impact.
I think it's all part of the unwinding. So as they talk about this, because again, the premise was we'll penalize people who don't buy insurance policies because we need healthy people to buy the insurance policies.
Yeah.
So there's money in the pool,
Right.
and they weren't doing it anyway. So, or a good number of them weren't. Now, again, you hear news reports about enrollment at a near high. I'll say that I enrolled this year for the first time.
Sure.
Won't go into the details of why that came about because it's not necessarily a glamorous story, but what I'm struggling with is coverage. So I have coverage, but I can't find coverage.
Well, there's only one left in Indiana. Everybody else is.
And it doesn't even cover the whole state. Ambetter does not cover the entire state. There are counties that they don't sell into, and then try to find a doctor in network that's taking people, and it's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So it's coming apart. It's not working, and what you touched on is going to continue to help it not work. And so I think what's going to happen
at some point
is
it's going to have to be completely overhauled again.
now that I'm not going to be penalized for not buying into the marketplace, though ironically I did, or buying insurance. Hopefully that means that insurance people will come back into the marketplace with maybe those standardized high deductible plans. I can get a network that has doctors I can see, pay a reduced rate, and only actually dip into insurance coverage if I had my arm needing to be put back on.
And this thing is just going to depend on what all the details are and the rules are, and the insurance companies are going to look at it and figure out whether they can come in and make a profit or not and do it. So.
Yep. So that's the thing. I think it's still the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that's where these things will come around, and how is the funding for because there's a lot of people who get that
Reduced
tax
payment.
credit.
Mm-hmm.
That either can be applied to your policy or taken as a credit later. Where's that money going to come from going forward? I think that's only sort of set for this year, but we'll see. So yeah, at least Winstead said you're awesome.
You're awesome.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're awesome.
She's fantastic. She's we're in Toastmasters together.
Oh, okay.
So Lake Effect Toastmasters.
Lake Effect.
Yeah.
That's a great for today.
Right. That's over one. Huh?
Yeah, there you go.
Actually,
But anyway, that's a snippet. Hopefully,
It's 7 o'clock. Right?
I didn't think I was going to go the whole
Oh,
time. Well, we chatted a little bit.
Yep.
But it's I think the more people now the crazy thing about this whole thing is the tax brackets you're going to see come February because all the employers, if you get a paycheck, those of you who are self-employed, those of you who are on different situations where you're not getting a weekly set salary, you're not going to really see this. But those who are receiving a paycheck that taxes are withheld, you're going to see a difference in February because all the employers are going to be required
based on the new number.
to go to the new table. Yeah. And why that table is different is because your effective tax rate estimate based on what you get paid that week is going to put you in a different bracket or a tax rate. So you'll see it. That's why people kept pointing to February. Yeah. What's that?
Mm-hmm. So people could see more in their check.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I kept hearing like, oh, you're going to see it in February. I'm like, no, you don't pay taxes until 2019. But there will be less withheld theoretically.
Right.
So again, depending on what you choose for your holding numbers, withholding numbers.
Right.
But those of us who don't have a paycheck and who work basically as a self-employed type of person, we don't have
to keep it all.
We get to pay both sides anyway. So I guess ultimately we'll pay less on the both sides thing, but that's why they talk about in February you'll see a change. I'm sure there's people scrambling to get these tables out and all the software updated and all their little packages all over the place.
Sure.
So
I'm sure.
But in terms of your filling out your taxes that are going to be due in April, this does not apply to 17 income. So 2017 income.
So this year everything stays the same. It'll be next year.
Yeah. So your TurboTaxes and your H&R Block tax things are still good to go from them. There'll be little tweaks along the way, but anyway, that's hopefully gives you something to say, oh, okay, maybe this tax law works for me, or I still hate it, or whatever you might think about it. At least you can maybe apply some things if you're on the brink of getting that $1 million mortgage. Think twice, maybe tweak it down to $750.
But I'll tell you what, though, that's something that it's just before we end here, it's the $750,000 mortgage sounds like a lot because we're here. You go out west. The house that we were staying in Colorado, since we were there, but before I came out here for law school, has doubled in value.
Yeah.
And so it is not there yet, but it's close. It's approaching to where it could get in that danger zone. So, so I think, especially out west, I think you're going to see a lot of that being more impactful.
We have to scrape together a little more on that down payment to get that mortgage rate down, or that mortgage payment amount down.
Yeah.
But where it does come into play is those folks that may be in that $800,000 area, $900,000 area. You don't want to refinance,
right?
Because you got that grandfathered thing in there. I mean, you'd have to make up a big gap to get.
Also, I would imagine that homes that are on the kind of the borderline there of being in that range, they might suppress prices a little bit and say, hey, we're going to keep it low for you so you can do this.
Some creative financing opportunities.
I'm sure there's all different kinds of things out there.
Smart people out there that are already churning through this and looking for ways to do it. It was that webinar we were listening to about talking about income being taken in a different state. I'm not sure how you can do that, but that's outside my area of understanding. So there's always going to be people responding, and it'll take a couple months probably for people to really dig through this. But if you have questions, if you saw this and you want some clarification, feel free to drop us a note in the box. So you can visit us at CCSKLaw.com, and there's a form there. You can float a question to us or ask for some ask for some opportunity to sit down and chat with us about what this might mean to you and your planning and such. Or
Check
as
us
we
out
get into next week, we'll talk business
and
maybe your small business. I think again
Oh,
that's a big thing. There's a lot of folks that have small businesses that this is going to have an impact.
That's right.
Good or bad, don't know yet.
That's for next Tuesday.
That's
for
it.
next
That's the
week.
cliffhanger for you.
Yeah,
That's right.
and it's going to be personal.
If we
We'll
survive the
see.
snowpocalypse.
Yeah.
But,
I think we're done. I don't know.
we should hopefully be done. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
with the snow
Snow.
or with the
Both, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. No. Well, thanks
I'm
for joining
ready.
us.
I'm ready for the 60-degree weather we had the other day. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.